All right, guys, let's get into this one really quickly. We're talking Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Bud Crawford, the hottest topic going on in boxing right now. And if you've been living under a rock, this fight takes place July 29th in Las Vegas, Nevada at the T-Mobile Arena. It's for Undisputed, guys, so make sure you get your tickets. And if you're not getting a ticket, make sure you order the fight on pay-per-view. Support the fighters, support the platforms when they're putting on fights that we want to see. Now, with that said, let's talk a little bit about this press conference today. Honestly, I didn't even know there was a press conference today. I saw that it was on the PBC podcast. They did a Zoom type thing where the media got to call in and ask questions of both of the fighters. Now, it wasn't a whole lot of new topics covered. You know, they pretty much covered everything. We've seen everything, heard everything. But I want to talk a little bit about what Errol had to say about, you know, I would say the contrast in their resumes, him and Terence Bud Crawford's resumes. Now, I have done some videos on Terence Bud Crawford's resume, but since Errol brought it up, I wanted to kind of reiterate what I said and, you know, just give you guys my take on the whole you haven't fought anybody resume thing. Now, let me read what Errol had to say first. He says, "I think my experience will be a factor just with the high level big fights that I've been in and the magnitude of the fights that I've been in, like Mikey Garcia. From a talent perspective, I say I've been in a lot. I fought Sean Porter in 2019, who was way better than the one he fought in 2021, and even with Kell Brook too. A lot of people he fought were a shell of themselves. Even Amir Khan's coach, Virgil Hunter, said he wasn't the same after he fought Canelo and was viciously knocked out." All right, so that's what Errol had to say. And I will agree, Amir Khan was a shell of himself after being knocked out by Canelo Alvarez. Anybody getting knocked out by Canelo Alvarez is probably going to be a shell of themselves later on. But I will say this, the same thing could be said for the Kell Brook fight, Errol Spence and Kell Brook fight. If you look at it, it's basically the same thing. Kell Brook went up to 160 to face off against Triple G. And Triple G stopped Kell Brook, broke his eye socket. Kell Brook had to come back down to face his IBF mandatory in Errol Spence Jr. He had a hard time losing weight, and you could say he wasn't the same fighter after he got his eye socket broken. So, you know, you could say the same thing like I said. So I know people are probably going to try to spin it and look at it different just because Kell Brook had a belt. But just because he had the belt doesn't mean that, you know, he was that same fighter that fought Sean Porter when he took that belt. Now, as far as their resumes goes at 147, let's take a look at Crawford's resume at 147. If you look at if you zoom in a little bit more, there's not much of a difference in the guys that they fought at 147. Both of the guys fought Porter. Both of the guys fought Kell Brook. The biggest difference I would say is that Terence didn't fight Danny Garcia, which Danny didn't want any smoke, and he didn't fight Yordenis Ugas, which Ugas wasn't seen as a top tier fighter. He was seen more as a B-level fighter, I would say. He just happened to defeat Manny Pacquiao and get the opportunity to face Errol Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. was supposed to face off against Manny Pacquiao, as you guys know. Now, both of those guys tried to get a Manny Pacquiao fight, and that fight never panned out. So there's not a huge difference. I think the difference is that the guys on the PB side had the titles, and they pretty much had control of the belts at the time outside of, I would say, well, Manny Pacquiao did sign with the PBC, so they did have control of all the belts. So, you know, Terence Bud Crawford being on Top Rank, you know, he didn't have a lot of access to that. And Errol said it before in the past, you know, he was going to clean up his side of the street first. You guys remember this side of the street thing. But anyway, I talked about Terence Bud Crawford's resume, and at 147 and outside of 147, and I would say he has the more well-rounded resume compared to Errol Spence Jr. I said that in a previous video of how he's been in the ring with a myriad of different styles as opposed to Errol Spence Jr. And I think that's what makes him such a well-rounded fighter. And I'm going to mention some of those guys again because I still have it here. I had it wrote down from the other day when I did the video. I mentioned Evas Kavaliauskas, who is a hard puncher. Kell Brook, of course, who was a very strong guy with great fundamentals. Jose Benavidez, who loves to press. He's a pressure fighter. Jeff Horn, rough and rugged fighter. Sean Porter, very athletic fighter. And I thought he looked good in both of those fights, if you ask me. Victor Postal, who was a solid boxer in his own right. And I didn't mention, who else did I mention? Gamboa, who at the time, was a solid fighter himself. Very fast hands, power, great footwork. So he's been in the ring with a whole lot of different styles, and I think that's what makes him such a well-rounded fighter. So I don't see a big difference in him not facing the champions at 147 outside of him facing good fighters. And just because these guys don't have the big names doesn't mean they weren't good fighters. I think they were great fighters in my opinion. I just think they didn't have the marquee name. So it's not all in a name all the time. It's in the level of competition. And I think he faced some pretty solid guys. So I don't really see anything wrong with his resume. I do understand Errol, saying that he's fought the better competition. Of course he's going to say that because, he wants to be seen as, the big fish, the guy who's done all the heavy lifting. He said it himself in the past. But if you just zoom in a little bit and you pay attention to the fighters that he's actually been in the ring with, I'm talking about Bud Crawford. He has a solid resume, guys, and I'm going to stand on that. Now, whether or not he's going to win the fight come July 29th, I don't know. It's a 50-50 fight between the two. They both have great skill sets. They both are true dogs, and, they both want it. They both want to be undisputed. This is a history-making fight. This is for legacy. And, it's all in who wants it the most, in my opinion. But anyway, guys, that's all I wanted to talk about. Just wanted to give my 2 cents on that. I just think people are making more out of Terence Bud Crawford's resume than they should. I don't think that his resume is weak. I think he has a solid resume. And he's seen as one of the pound for pound best fighters in the world. And that's for a reason, guys. That's for a reason. So you guys let me know how you feel about what Errol had to say in the comment section. It's the CMB. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. And I'm out. Peace.